Welcome to the Continuing Education module, Using Self-Service Technology for Wellness, Low-Cost Solutions for Behavior Change. Our agenda for this module includes the following. First, we're going to look at a definition of self-service technology. Secondly, we're going to look at some of the advantages of using that technology in your program. The focus of our self-service technology are 5 areas. The first are the use of wearables. Second are commitment aids that can be completed online. The third are online behavior change programs. The fourth is an online tracker and the use of trackers in an online version. And the fifth is use of e-health portals. So those are the 5 types of self-service technology we're going to focus on in this particular module. We're going to look at some common issues with all 5 of these. We're going to look at some examples in the marketplace, and then we're going to summarize key points from this particular module. Now let's look at the self-service technology and its a definition that we're going to be applying. And we define it as user-adopted and controlled use of smartphone, web, email, and Wi-Fi technology to support personal wellness. Self-service technology and wellness we look at as these 5 areas. Again, wearables, commitment aids, online behavior change programs, online and app trackers, and e-health portals. So those are the 5 types of technology we're going to focus on in this particular module. Now, self-service tools offer us a lot, and we want to focus on the following. First of all, they allow us to meet needs. So they fulfill the needs that employees have for support around wellness behavior change. They also provide tracking and feedback. So that's an important dimension in behavior change. So our ability to track our behavior and to experience feedback of various kinds about the behaviors we're changing. A third offer that they come up with is it provides information for problem solving. So we can use these self-service tools to actually help people resolve problems that are potentially functioning as barriers to a specific behavior change. Accountability for behavior and goals is also one of the things that these tools offer. So our ability to help people with that accountability follow-up once they have made a goal and begun to start moving toward that goal, many of these tools offer the opportunity for accountability. They also offer the ability to help people in the habit formation area and habit development. So that has to do with the cue that we use to initiate a routine. It can either be an unhealthy routine or a healthy routine, and we have rewards oftentimes associated with the completion of a routine. So when we think about this self-service technology, we actually are thinking about how can we use it to help people develop those long-term habits that actually help them normalize a healthy set of behaviors. And it also makes wellness scalable. So one of the advantages of using this kind of self-service technology is it takes it out of the realm of having to have someone else do something for you. You can essentially do it yourself. And that allows us to make wellness more of a scalable kind of activity. And scalability is a big challenge for us as we think about population health particularly. It also allows us to lower the unit cost because this self-service technology is going to be less expensive than having a vendor or having a wellness coach involved in some capacity. So it does give us the opportunity to lower the unit cost of the delivery of various kinds of services to a population we're trying to serve. It also allows us to increase relevance because this technology is upgradable and updatable in a more easy fashion than many of our other technologies in wellness. So it does allow us to increase the relevance of the topic area and the information, the problem-solving assistance, all of the things that this self-service technology essentially can contribute to. We also have to be careful, though, to watch out for what's called the shiny object distraction. And that means that sometimes just the packaging and the way in which the technology is presented can sometimes distract us from looking at the long-term behavior change aspects of what we're dealing with. So that shiny object distraction is oftentimes what our management does when they get fixated on something like wearables and then want to see the wearables become the easy, quick, magic solution for the issues around wellness. So we need to watch out for those possible shiny object distractions. Now, the biggest challenges we run into with the self-service technology is initial adoption, particularly in those individuals over the age of 30 and their use of the technology and its initial adoption by them. There's also the issue of overcoming the unfamiliarity. And unfamiliarity will keep us oftentimes from doing things. We don't quite know what is expected or what normals are. We don't have a good idea of what's involved in a particular use of technology, so therefore we don't use it. So we have to overcome that unfamiliarity by being able to demo things for people, to give them opportunities to practice, to give them opportunities to use the technology themselves. It's also a challenge to have this technology be capable of delivering on the promises that are oftentimes made by proponents and salespeople. So the issue of how much is actually achievable or realistic in terms of promises on this technology. There's also the issue of continued long-term use. And the shelf life of much of the technology of wellness is relatively short. That just means that people oftentimes use it for a short period of time and then they stop using it. They stop wearing their Fitbit. They stop using a pedometer. They stop going to the eHealth portal. They stop going through to their tracker to track their food intake. So that continued long-term use is one of our biggest challenges. We also have the issue of sustaining the results, the behavioral results. So we may have continued long-term use, but we also have to ask the question, what's the underlying behavioral result that we're attempting to get? And are we able to sustain that using that particular technology form, structure of incentives, social support for whatever it is? There's also the issue of what's the connection of this self-service technology to other interventions that are going to reinforce it and give it legs. So the way in which we've connected it to other interventions the program is offering has a lot to do with whether people in fact adopt the new behavior, develop the new habit, and actually end up doing things that are going to help them be healthier. Now let's look at wearables as one of our first self-service technologies. You can see these different models of Fitbits. And first of all, we know that we're early in development. So even though we get a lot of claims made by manufacturers, we still are at a fairly early stage of development of this technology. Usually we must be ready for prime time if we're going to use technology. And unfortunately, a lot of the wearables out there are not ready for prime time. And I'll describe more about what that means in a minute, but just if at this point, just realize that this technology needs to be tested in a way that allows it to be scaled to large numbers of people, all of which have different habits and different patterns and different behavioral challenges and issues. But also, wearables should not be used in a standalone approach. That's probably one of the most risky things we do with any technology, is put it in a standalone kind of role, which just means we expect people to operate it, to use it, to continue to use it without having any involvement or any connection to any other intervention or any other help. It also should not or must not be easy to set up and use. So when we in fact deal with the issue of putting this technology in place, it needs to be fairly intuitive and fairly clear about how to set up and use it. The other issues that are going to be less important, that are not quite in that Pareto group you see of the 4 bullet points on the top, are things like adequate battery life, auto load to a platform so that they don't have to initiate that manually and have a manual upload, feedback over time, what's the form of that feedback, how and what it looks like in terms of graphic presentation. Is it clear? Does it in fact motivate or inspire? Does it in fact show some things that are related back to the individual's intrinsic reasons for doing whatever it is that you got them doing? And also the accuracy, and those have been really problematic in the wearable field. So the issue of how accurate is the data that comes out of these wearable devices. And adaptability and configurability are another series of issues. And can I, in fact, configure it to meet my needs? Is it adaptable to the uses that I want to put it to? And finally, the connectedness of a wearable and the link to a larger incentive program. So how does it fit in with other interventions in the wellness program? So for wearables, the Pareto issues are the first 4. Those are the big ones. The other issues that come into play are listed under that category, and they include the items we just went through. Now let's look at commitment aids as another one of these self-service technologies. This one is from Stick, and it's a web-based free application that you can use that helps you formulate goals, set up some sort of reward or stakes that you want to put against your achievement of the goal, and then a referee, an involvement of a referee, and the identification of support for a particular goal that you're working on. These devices are intended to help structure the goal setting and follow-up process so that you in fact can use an external kind of platform to help you achieve the goal that you want to achieve related to wellness. These must be easy to use and easy to set up. So that's our challenge when we come to look at these various free apps and free online resources that are used. It also needs a sound reinforcement strategy. So we need to be able to have a reinforcement strategy that works in terms of our own preferences and our own desires around the achievement of a specific wellness goal. Those are the big issues, those 3. The other issues include the methods of social reinforcement, the adaptability of rewards and penalties. So how easy is it for me to specify either sources that I want to give money to, and if I achieve the goal, I get to give it, or I set it up so that I give it to an organization I don't want to give anything to if that's going to motivate me to a larger degree. There's also the connectability issues. What does this connect to? Does it have any relationship to any other incentive device or incentive feature that the program may be using? There's also the issue of what platforms are supported. What can I use this on? Is it only good for a Nokia-based phone, or does it allow me to use a smartphone of a different kind? So it's a platform that is supported by it. And the link to larger incentive rewards. So how does this fit? This can be my short-term incentive. How does it fit with a longer-term incentive around wellness? And the issue of convenience. How convenient is it for me to be able to use it? Does its convenience outweigh or contribute to its value in my mind? So the ability to use these commitment aids, these are essentially free sources to be able to set up and structure personal objectives and goals around wellness, and then also how we structure our internal incentive and how we work with the referee or a support level of help. Now let's look at the next self-service technology, and that's online behavior change programs. And this is an example of one of them. Self-Help Works. It provides both a corporate and a consumer website. And it's essentially using self-guided change. So that just means I'm the one that's really working on the change myself. I've got this platform and program to help me, but it's basically helping me progress toward a goal that I have to make a change in behavior. This would really be summed up as digital health coaching. It's where I'm getting some help online. Oftentimes, these sites are using some learning systems technology. It can also use some artificial intelligence to help the platform actually support my behavior change. It must engage the user. So whatever my approach is in this online program, I have to be able to have some high level of engagement of the individual, which means it's got to be adapted to my preferences, desires, readiness to change, all of the things that are really related to my own unique position when it comes to wellness issues. Now, those three are the major Pareto group items. The other issues which are also going to come into play are the use of a technology platform, what that platform supports, and how it allows me to access it. The import-export ability and the ease of that. Can I, in fact, link it to other activities? Are there application um, program interfaces that I can use to transport data from one system to another? Does it give me a good summarization of what my status is? And is that fed back to me in a way that's both attractive, compelling, and understandable? Is that graphic portrayal attractive? Does it in fact connect to a larger incentive? So these are some of the issues that come into play with these online behavior change programs that are really using almost like a digital coach or a digital experience, an online experience around supporting specific behavior changes. Now, the next area are online and app trackers. And just some interesting information about this issue, 7 in 10 US adults keep track of a health indicator. So that may be their weight, it may be their amount of fitness activities, it could be their blood pressure, a whole variety of things that US adults track. About 60% of US adults say they track their weight, diet, or exercise routine. About 1/3 of US adults track health indicators such as blood pressure, blood sugar, headaches, or sleep patterns. And they oftentimes, by the way, do that through a personal health record. So our PHRs are oftentimes offered by an e-health portal vendor to help me consolidate in one place many of the things that I'm tracking or looking at. And then that fourth issue is about half of those who track health indicators do so in their head. So they aren't using online resources or even paper, manual processed type of information. So when we come to the online and app trackers, ease of setup is a primary issue, ease of entry of information is a secondary issue, and configurability is a major issue. So those three indicate the Pareto group, the most important items. Other issues, again, come back to social reinforcement, the adaptability of rewards and penalties under that system of tracking, the connectability to other interventions and other resources that might support wellness, the platforms that support that particular online or app tracker, the link to a larger incentive reward, the convenience of long-term use. Now, when we come to e-health portals are used a lot, but they are not used by individual employees very much. So we have a lot of capability that basically sits unutilized. That's a problem, and there are some issues that come into play with that. The functional capability is one of those issues. So depending on what your portal can do for people, what kind of information it can provide, or what it in fact will help people accomplish has a lot to do with the value placed on the eHealth portal. The credibility of that resource in terms of how often is it updated? Is it associated with a known, identified kind of thought leader in terms of health and healthcare? That's credibility is important. Are there fixes for a relatively low health literacy? Health literacy is a major problem for the US. Our population is not very literate about their health and healthcare. So the idea that what are your fixes for helping people with the problems of a low level of health literacy? So the National Academy of Sciences has a number of studies and a number of recommendations about how we go about enhancing the health literacy of our population. But those three constitutes some of the Pareto group. Another one of the major issues is, do we in fact take the time to show people what's available on the website? Not just to say, oh, there's lots of stuff there, go use it, but to say, here, let me show you what's available on this eHealth portal. And I think that's the issue, the major issue that's contributing to a relatively low use of those eHealth portals. So unless you have identified some functional capability that the individual values and you've shown them how to get it out of that website, they are not likely to be using the website at any high level or high rate. Another one of the major issues is the eHealth portal incented in some form? Do we in fact have some way of requiring that people utilize it in order to receive an incentive reward? So if we have not done very good demos and we haven't really focused on the functional needs or the functional capability that the individuals have and the site can provide, and we haven't done much to connect it to incentives, it's not likely to be very used. Other issues are going to include the commercial-free zone. That's a problem when you start using websites like WebMD.com, which you can see from the sample of the screenshot. That's what that is, and that also comes with commercials. So is there a commercial-free option in my eHealth portal? Does it have good drill down capability? Is it forward-leaning in terms of being more proactive? Perhaps capturing information that the individual has requested and then feeding that back to them at various times. And then also the level of sophistication of the portal. Portals are not all the same. They are very different, just as HRAs are very different. So the issue is, what's the level of sophistication that is in the eHealth portal, and how effective is the work that is being done by the vendor to make sure that the user experience is excellent. And the info capture capability. Can we in fact see where people are going, see what topics they're looking into, how long they spend in a various location, what the sequence of clicks and click routes are through the website. So that a lot of that info capture capability is also part of the functional value that the eHealth portal can potentially bring. And the link to the employer and or health plan websites. So how well integrated does the eHealth portal, is the eHealth portal in terms of its usefulness and its connection back to both the employer's website, but also a health plan or relevant health plan's website. Now, the critical issues in the self-service technology that we've looked at all different kinds, is as follows. First of all, it has to have easy access. So it's got to be something that I can access on my smartphone, I can access on my computer, not having much in the way of obstacles and barriers to that. I need to have a way of looking at quick demos. So if my site does not have demo capability that shows you kind of almost like a YouTube or a user interface demo, that's going to detract from the long-term usefulness of the eHealth portal and contribute to lower levels of uses. And examples, providing examples within the eHealth portal that allow people to see what the example of what functionality is there, what does it actually do for you. And its scalability. Is it available at all hours at the same level of access? Or are there times when it's less available due to demand or due to other issues that are affecting the availability or accessibility through the internet? And the drill down capability, the ability for me to go on the website if I want more information, to be able to have a click route that I can take that will get me to more detailed information. And the active transfer issue. If I want to go to another intervention or connect with another intervention that's my employer's offer or my health plan offers, how easy is that to do? And is it an active transfer in terms of a warm handoff to another resource or another intervention? Also, the issue of how often is it updated? What are the updating signatures and signs that you would see as you go through a website? You can get an idea of that by going to the free website, webmd.com, and actually seeing at the bottom of many of the stories and questions and condition centers and so on, a note on when it was last updated. And it needs to be user-friendly. So it needs to have a user interface that actually is user-friendly and recognizes the low computer literacy that may be also in the population and in the older individuals in that population. Not that everyone by age is equally computer literate. There obviously are lots of differences. But if you've got an average age of maybe 42 or above, you've got a big chunk of your population that have not necessarily grown up with this technology and probably do need to have some help at using it effectively. And it needs to be relevant to personal goals. So the way in which I'm structuring that technology in all its different forms, the 5 different kinds of self-service technology, they need to be relevant to the individual's personal wellness goals. Now, examples of that self-service technology for each of the 5 types, the wearables, you can see Fitbit, the Apple Watch, the Garmin Viveo, the Jawbone Up 2. So those are different kinds of wearables and examples of wearables. You can then track these by putting it into your browser and actually go to the website and see these different devices. Commitment devices or commitment aids are Sticky and Beeminder are 2 major ones. You can also find other ones by looking at the category of commitment aids and see what comes up, particularly around wellness commitment devices or wellness commitment aids. Online behavior change programs, selfhelpworks.com, thrive.com, Habit Design is another one of them. Those are all programs that have some free components, but they also have upgraded components. And then the online and app trackers, Lose It, shapeup.com would be another one. eHealth portals, the webmd.com public site. WebMD also offers a large number of private websites and private eHealth portals for their clients. They've got about 250 large company clients. And then medicallogicnets.com would be another eHealth portal that you could potentially look at and see what its functionality is. So whenever you're looking at eHealth portals, you want to go through the experience as if you were a newbie and you then just use the site and ping as much as you can down into its functional capabilities. But you can get a good sense of how intuitive the site is and how well designed it is by taking it on like that. So these again are examples of the 5 different kinds of self-service technology that we've talked about briefly in this module. Now let's look at using the technology for wellness in a way that would help assure that you're getting the full value and utility out of this technology. So the things that we want to make sure about is we want to make sure it's accessible. So we don't want any barriers to access. We don't want people to have to jump through any hoops or have to do anything that's going to dissuade them from using this self-service technology. We also want to do demos to help them overcome the unfamiliarity. This is new to a lot of people. So if they've not had any experience with it, we want to use a demo opportunity where we show them what the technology does, show them how to utilize it, how to use it, how to get the most out of it. So those demos to help them overcome unfamiliarity. Make sure that whatever technology you're introducing for wellness in your wellness program, that it's ready for prime time. And that just means that all the bugs have been worked out and there's not likely to be any failure or any major obstacle to its use by the population over time. So that's making sure it's ready for prime time. We also want to verify whatever value propositions vendors are telling us. So if we have certain values that are being cast for the individual user, we want to test that out. We want to verify that. So one of the things we can do, by the way, is to have our employee advisory committee, the members of that, be tasked to go try out the technology, to be the ones that kind of beta the technology or test it out before it's adopted. And then you compare notes among the people who tried to use it to find out what kinds of problems came up. And then you feed that back to the vendor. And that is one of the ways that we want to make sure that we don't introduce technology that ends up damaging the credibility of our wellness program because we've introduced something to people that they can't use. We also want to look at sustainability. So our need is to look at this technology and ask the question, how many people have used this more than 4 years or more than 3 years? And then for the vendor who's selling this to us, we want to ask the question, give me the names and contacts that I can talk to for your clients that have been using this system for years. I want to know what the sustainability is. How many people drop out after that first year or that first 6 months? So sustainability needs to be one of our major concerns in the choice of this technology. We don't want to kind of shoot our wad with a technology offering that ends up not being very, very good for employees. We also want to have some consistent pressure on our vendors, the technology, self-service technology vendors that are represented by these 5 areas. Whoever we choose, we want to put pressure on them for improvements. So I would want to be asking a group of tech-savvy people and a group of not-so-tech-savvy to test out something and then to give me feedback. How did the eHealth portal work? How did the online tracker work? What was the outcome that you had from using a wearable? So I want to put pressure on the vendors. We have not done that for a lot of our technology and wellness, and as a result, we are ending up dropping the technology because we haven't gotten any meaningful results from it. So part of that has been our fault as employers and buyers of wellness, that we haven't done what we needed to do to put pressure on the vendors for making improvements in the user experience. And finally, we want to connect these activities, this self-service technology, to other interventions. We don't want it to just stand alone. We want people to gain support, to be referred into other interventions, to have different ways of being able to help them make the long-term changes and behavior changes that are innate to wellness. So these, again, are some of the suggestions for how you get the most out of this self-service technology. Now let's summarize some of the main points from this particular module. Self-service technology is a vital part of an effective wellness program. We need to have this type of self-service technology available to people as a low-cost alternative for programming. The key to use of self-service technology is an effective demonstration. And I just emphasize it by saying, show me. Show me how to use this technology. And if we don't do that, you will see very low levels of uptake in virtually all the technology if we haven't shown people how to use it and what it's good for. The third point is that generational differences in the use of self-service technology are extremely important. So if we have a lot of young employees and they're millennials, and then we've got a lot of individuals in their 50s, 60s, 70s, that's going to require me to do different kinds of things to introduce and use this technology. The technology must be thoroughly tested for user experience before it is broadly used. You do not want to introduce any technology that you haven't tested well. And it doesn't mean you have to do all the testing. You basically determine who you can ask to help you. And you basically task them, both high computer literacy people as well as low computer literacy people, and you task them to use the technology and report back to you what their experience was. And you can save yourself from a lot of pain and a lot of discomfort if you in fact will do this. Reminders and user feedback are important in refining the technology. There needs to be a consistent, continuous flow of feedback to the vendor. The vendor needs to be addressing these issues, or you should get a new vendor. Clear use case examples that are relevant to users need to be provided. Don't use use cases that are not related to your population. So make sure age, gender, education levels, job responsibilities, access to computers, all those things are in fact included in your use case examples. Technology without relationship connections is not likely to have sustaining value. So where we don't connect people in some way with other people, we're not likely to see long-term technology use. It's kind of like the issue of Facebook. Why is Facebook such a powerful force? It's a social connection. So those are relationships that we're working on. So we need to figure out how to help that technology have a relationship angle. To be maximally effective, you will have to continuously evaluate the user experience. You can't assume that the vendor is just doing things the same old way. The vendor is changing all the time, and their staff is changing. So the issue of how you in fact get that value out of it involves a continuous evaluation approach to the user experience. And user needs change regularly and need to be addressed. So we need to keep pace with what the expectations of our employees and their family members are in looking at this technology. And finally, be aware of the shiny object syndrome. Don't get, stuck on a shiny object that has no long-term relevance to the results that your wellness program is intending to produce. So these, again, are some of the summary of main points from this particular module. Now, let's look at some key questions. Our first question is, what position should I take on new self-service technology? And my advice to you is you want to be able to update your program. You want it to keep pace with technology developments. At the same time, you also want to take a position that says, let's integrate the low-cost items that we vet or test to make sure that they can do what it is that we think they can. And then the third issue in that position, you shouldn't plan on the technology standing alone. That new technology should not be just created and put by itself, but should be linked to other interventions. That position also on the new technology is we need some novelty. Novelty is important because that keeps people coming back to our program, particularly if we do not have a very sound or comprehensive incentive strategy. And we also want to reduce the unfamiliarity with that new self-service technology. So we want to have some demo opportunities and some things for people to see what it looks like. We also need to have pressure on the vendors, whatever vendor we're using, whether it's a free service or not. We want to put pressure on the vendor to improve the experience over time. And we also want to be likely to have not a long shelf life for new self-service technology. That means that it's not necessarily going to be around over a long period of time. We want to be careful, though, that we get things that do contribute in some incremental fashion to our wellness program's results. The next question is, how can I keep my senior management from succumbing to shiny object distractions? And I would suggest that you keep asking them about their personal behavior using that shiny object. So if they are fixated on something, you keep asking them, how's that going? How's that Fitbit working? What are you doing now with that online, commitment aid that you are using? So you keep them focused back on their own personal behavior. Usually what I find happens is the senior management that gets into that shiny object distraction may get distracted about it for a time period, but what usually happens is in their own use patterns, they end up moving away from it. It's partly because they've got a pretty short attention span. So the idea that that shiny object should be something that you build your program around is not a good strategy, particularly when your senior staff are not able to maintain and sustain long-term use of it. We also can remind our senior managers that there's no magic bullet here. There's no magic device or way of approaching this that is going to be all encompassing and all powerful. Shiny objects don't last, and the interest around those shiny objects has a half-life that is pretty short. So it just means that half of the level of interest is going to go away in a fairly short period of time. So that's what I would continue to keep reminding my senior management about when they start to succumb to some of those shiny object distractions. The third question is, how can I stay up on new developments in self-service technology? And I think you either have to make the commitment to do this, or you have to task several people that will go out and continue going back and looking at some of this technology, seeing if it's improving, seeing what use levels there are, how people are experiencing it, what new features have to offer. So what you can do is, if you select some preferred self-service technology to recommend the use by your employees and or their family members, then you want those same sources to be continually looked at by your helpers that can essentially go and see what the user experience, how it's changing, what problems there are, and so on. So again, you don't have to do this unless you want to do this yourself. And then you have to then decide, what are my opportunity costs? I'm not doing other things that may in fact be more important to the effectiveness of my wellness program. So you have to make that choice. But what I would do if I were you is I would get a group of helpers, some very technologically literate and others not so technologically literate, and actually have them be watching what sources you're recommending for people to use when it comes to these 5 different kinds of self-service technology. And then from that, you want to refine and update your own recommended list, the list of technologies that you recommend people use. So these are some of the strategies that will help you stay up on the new developments in self-service technology. Now that you've completed this module, go ahead and take the quiz.